This route avoids road closures on M4. You are on the fastest route. You should reach your destination by 7:29. In 300 yards, turn right onto Farnham Road, A355. Take the next right onto Farnham Road, A355. Continue on Farnham Road for half a mile. In a quarter of a mile, turn left onto Bath Road, A4. Take the next left onto Bath Road, A4. Continue on A4 for 1 mile.
To isolate and will lose money as a result of not working and are on benefit and cannot do their job from home. Is that 5 people or 12? I'm not sure. But what about these fines? This is Chris Dorr, QC, expressing his concerns about
My experience of 26 years of the justice system is that the more that you penalise people, and the more you threaten them, the more you alienate them from a process which should actually be inclusive The problem we have is that this government, from day one, has failed to communicate to the public in a way that has persuaded the public. People have lost confidence in the government. They don't understand the message. They don't understand the reasons why decisions are being made. And that's the reason people break the law. And bringing in fines, particularly very large fines, will not act as a deterrent to anyone.
I agree with that. That's Crystal QC. People have to buy in, otherwise they're just not going to do stuff, are they? If you start banding around more and more punishments, is that the way to change behaviour? I don't think so. I think you've got to get people on board with sensible, smart advice, which is easy to understand. And I think people are sometimes pretty lazy about that. But people have got to buy into it, and people are making their own decisions now. And people are acting in their own, not personal self-interest, but they're acting based upon their own assessment of their own risk and those around them who may be vulnerable. And is that necessarily a bad thing? Because if you really want to get down to the Swedish model, that is what has happened. Incidentally, not all the schools were open in Sweden. It was only the junior schools, 11 and under. It wasn't all the schools the whole time. But people generally had a sense of responsibility, and the government trusted them. Are we not to be trusted over here? 0345 6060 973. Let's bring into the conversation Councillor Adi Adeyemo, leader of the Liberal Democrats group at Solihull Council. Good morning to you, Councillor Adeyemo.
Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Yeah, not too. I'm quite bright and ready for a rant this morning, actually. And, now listen, how are your restrictions in your area in Solihull?
Oh, in Solihull, well, we are. We're managing, we're doing quite well. It's one of those things that has to be done, and I think people understand that, and it's just about taking the public with you, as you have just been saying.
Yeah. I wonder how we know that this has to be done. How is a lockdown an answer to an endemic virus, which ultimately, Eddie, we're going to have to live with?
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto Wellington Street, A4.
Especially somewhere like Solihull, where we have a very high proportion of elderly residents, is maybe the consequences of this virus. It's not something that you just get ill with and you feel a bit ill for a couple of days and you go on again. We have lots of people in care homes who are dying. We have people like me, a black man over 50. We're much more at risk. We're much more at risk.
Exit the roundabout onto Wellington Street. Continue on A4 for 2 miles.
Trusted to make their own decisions when it comes to risk to consequence. Do you think people will look at their own circumstances and those around them and make those decisions, or are we, herding people in one direction and smacking them if they don't behave? Because I don't think those messages from government are particularly hitting home.
I think what's happening is that people are tired. People are tired of being locked up. People are tired of staying at home. People are tired of maybe not even going to work in some cases and mixing with their peers. The main thing here is that we need to inform people and let them make sensible decisions. And I think the mixed messages coming from government haven't helped. And what we're trying to do here in Solihull, we're saying to people, in fact, you use those exact words, doing the right thing for Solihull. That's what we're saying here to people, is saying, do the right thing. Go out, get on with your life, get on with your business, but do it sensibly and carefully. Imagine everybody out there has got a lurgy, and you just stand a few feet away from them. That's really what this is all about. It's not so much about rules. It is really about just being sensible.
And have you seen particularly egregious examples of people misbehaving, not following the rules, and being irresponsible where you are?
Yes, I have. As a councillor, when you go out, you do keep an eye out more for these sorts of things. You see large groups of people meeting. You see people clustering together. But most of the time, people do realise that they need to be a little bit further apart. Most people, as is always the case, behave themselves. One or two people, especially when you're doing the food shop, people brush past you, partly because they are in that zone. But on the whole, most people do comply.
It's a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Nice and early. Councillor Adi Adeyemo is leader of the Liberal Democrats group at Solihull Council. council seems to be going along with these new rules, regulations. Asking people to do the right thing, we agree, is what we're after. But the threat of financial punishment or being dogged in by a COVID marshal, none of which you will see because they probably won't exist, these sorts of things I don't think are the right messaging. And don't kill your granny, I think, is one of the most patronising things I've ever heard out of a government. But there we are. Let's turn to Professor Azim Majid, who's head of the Department of Primary Care and Public Health at Imperial College London. Professor Majid, thank you very much for joining us. When I was talking to the councillor just a moment ago, I did ask him how is a lockdown an answer to an endemic virus? Perhaps you'd be qualified to try and have a go at the answer to that question. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Clearly, the lockdown is not a permanent solution. It's temporary measure to lower infection rates. It's time we would implement measures to control the infection. What's very disappointing is that we've noticed in February we're facing a very large epidemic. But even now, we've not really implemented policies to control that epidemic very well. So we don't have a very good, for example, testing and contact tracing system in place. So lockdown is really a very temporary thing, and it's not going to get rid of the virus. Once the lockdown ends, the virus will begin to begin to flow again and cause further infections. So I agree with you, it's not a permanent solution, it's just a temporary fix while we try to put in place other measures to control the epidemic.
So lockdowns work, but on a very temporary basis. And you just explained that we are actually going to have to live with this virus no matter what happens, right?
That's right. The vaccine is still quite a long way off. As you mentioned, there's a big drop in the vaccine to the entire population. So it could be another year or so while we live with this virus. And that's the only vaccine that works that we can give to people. So this is a long-term process, it's not a short-term fix. There's no short-term solution. As your previous caller mentioned, people must behave sensibly. We must keep a safe distance from people they come in contact with, wear face masks, use good hygiene practices. Employers must also be sensible as well and encourage home working. The government must get in place a very good system for testing and contact tracing and isolation. So we're in this for the long haul, for several months and perhaps a year or even more, depending on when the vaccine becomes available.
Do you think it's possible, from your professional perspective, to convince the government that we should be targeting all new measures to the frail and to the elderly rather than to everybody?
I think those groups have to take the most precautions because they are most at risk of complications and death. But we must actually tightly measure the entire population, so everyone must be sensible in how they behave, not moving in large groups, use face masks in public places when they're at risk of coming in contact with others. So I think everyone needs to use these measures, not just the way it's fair, but I agree they are the most at risk and needs to take the most precautions in how they behave.
And what do you make of these new fines, Professor Majid?
Yeah, the fines I'm not keen on because they're going to probably